Hello, I am Vikram Sirur. In today's session, we will learn about a life skill called critical thinking. We will learn about the techniques to improve our critical thinking skills, such as six thinking hats, Socratic questioning, and how to challenge assumptions. Let me start with the definition of critical thinking. Critical thinking is fourth from the list of 10 life skills identified by the World Health Organization. Critical thinking skill is the ability to think in an organized and rational manner, to understand connections between ideas and or facts. Creative thinking is about finding new methods of solving problems. Critical thinking is about evaluating these methods. Now let me hand it over to my team members to read out their chapters.
Hello, I'm Amarnath. I want to summarize an article, Three Simple Habits to Improve Your Critical Thinking. This article is by Helen Lee Borges, founder of Reboot Foundation. Creative thinkers need support from critical thinkers. You could become a great support to them if you develop your critical thinking muscle. There are three habits that could help you build your critical thinking skills: challenging assumptions, reasoning through logic, and going out of your bubble. Challenging assumptions. Let's say you are invited to evaluate your company's long-term strategy. Before attending the meeting, prepare yourself to ask some basic questions, such as how do you know that business will increase? What does the research say about the future of the market? What is your customer's perception about us? You could also practice challenging assumptions by asking, what if our clients changed? What if our suppliers went out of business, etc.? Such questioning will help your team to improve the ideas. You will see a change happening within you. You will also observe that your personal brand is improving day by day. The second habit is reasoning through logic. Sometimes companies make reasoning mistakes of overgeneralization or drawing sweeping conclusions based on limited or insufficient evidence. This is where you can contribute. Verifying the statements made by the proposer of the idea will help the person to improve the idea. Your practice of validating each statement against evidence will help in the assessment. Help your team to understand the difference between a fact and an opinion. This will change the thinking style of the whole team. As part of the skill building of critical thinking skills, study logical fallacies. It is a priceless skill knowing how to spot and identify fallacies. Example, ad hominem fallacy is when someone resorts to personal attacks rather than sticking to rational arguments. Black and white fallacy is when the proposer of an idea presents only polarized options without thinking of more options. Aristotle was the first person to identify logical fallacies as a tool to win an argument. The third habit is to interact with people outside your bubble. This will give a diversified dimension to your thinking. If you are in accounting, make friends with the marketing folks. If you are in strategy, try learning from HR, etc. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Andy Stanley. the insecure leader will interpret critical thinking as criticism.
Hi, I'm Sheetal Savur. This article is about six thinking hats. The idea of six thinking hats was introduced by Dr. Edward de Bono. Dr. de Bono is known for coining unique concepts such as lateral thinking, L game, PO, six action shoes, and serpetition. His Cognitive Research Trust program for schools revolutionized the education system in China and Venezuela. Edward de Bono introduced six thinking hats as a critical thinking tool or idea evaluation tool in 1985. When evaluating an idea critically, most of us have only one viewpoint. This trait does not allow us to look at the proposed idea from an intuitive, creative, or opposing viewpoint. The six thinking hats method forces us to conduct the evaluation wearing different imaginary perspective hats. This team exercise helps us to evaluate the idea better and to hone our thinking skills. The blue hat person, the exercise coordinator, asks all team members to wear a particular hat and give inputs wearing different hats. This forces everyone to focus only on one thought flow at a given time and to collaboratively contribute to that thought rather than thinking in diverse directions. This is how you think when you wear these different hats. White hat. Purpose: to get more information to facilitate the evaluation of ideas. Questions to ask the proposer: what is the available information and what are the facts that we have? Yellow hat. Purpose: to convey an optimistic point of view or pros about the idea. Questions to ask: what are the advantages of applying the solution and why do you think it's workable? Black hat. Purpose: to identify the disadvantages and weaknesses or cons of the idea. Questions to ask: what are the risks and why will the idea fail? Red hat. Purpose: to provide gut reactions such as love, hate, like or dislike about the idea. Questions to ask: what do you feel about the suggestion? And what is your gut reaction towards the suggestion? Green hat. Purpose: to trigger new thoughts or the creative thinking part of the discussion and evaluation. Questions to ask: what are some other creative solutions to the problem and how can we improve this idea? Let me end this chapter with a quote from Richard Branson. Critical thinking is the key to creative problem solving in business.
Hello, I am Shilpa Kshetramade. This article is about Socratic questioning, a critical thinking technique. Socrates used this method to enable students to examine ideas deeply. In the Socratic questioning method, the teacher, the person who asks the questions, assumes an ignorant mindset in order to challenge the student to think. The benefit to the student or the person who responds to the questions is that it makes her thorough about the topic because of the deep thinking she has to do when answering the questions. These are the six categories of Socratic questions. Clarity. This category of questions is to bring clarity so that both the questioner and responder are on the same page. Questions in this category are: what exactly does this mean? Can you give me an example? Can you rephrase that, please? Assumptions. This category is to challenge the beliefs of the responder. The questions are: What else would we assume? What would happen if? What are the bases of your assumptions? Rationale. This category is to understand the reasons and supporting evidence from the responder. The questions asked are, how can I be sure of what you're saying? What evidence do you have to support what you are saying? Are these reasons good enough? Perspectives. This category is to show that there are other equally valid perspectives. The questions asked are, how would you challenge your own viewpoint? What are the weaknesses in your idea? What will be the responses from each stakeholder about your idea? Implications. This category is to understand the consequences. The questions asked are, what impact would it have on each stakeholder? How would you deal with each impact? Who are the people who will guide us? Questions about the question. This category is to understand how much the respondent understands the importance of the questions. The questions asked are, why do you think I asked this question? What did you learn from the exercise? What were the gaps in your proposition? These questions below are just to show how little we know about simple things. What does vote mean? How do people decide whom to elect? How should they decide? If I do not know the candidates, should I vote? Why have elections? Why is democracy considered good? How do people become candidates? Let me end this chapter with a quote from Robert Frost. Thinking isn't to agree or disagree. That's voting.
Hello, I am Mythili Sarur. Today I want to summarize 2 TED Talks on critical thinking. The first talk is by Brian Oshiro, CEO, Teach 21 Education Group. Oshiro asks us to look at these questions and tell us which of these ignites engagement. A. Do you know what climate change is? B. What are the 3 causes of climate change? C. Why is climate change the biggest crisis facing this generation? The first question, do you know what climate change is a closed question. There is no way you can confirm the level of learning about the person from the answer. The second question, what are 3 causes of climate change, allows us to assess knowledge. The third question, why is climate change the biggest crisis facing this generation, gives the student an opportunity to think about the consequences of climate change. Brian observed during his study that most questions asked in schools stop at B. This only demonstrates knowledge and not the application of the knowledge. Asking the higher level questions is key to building critical thinking. It prepares students to face the real life situations of the outside world. The second talk, This is What It's Like to Go Undercover in North Korea, is by Suki Kim, author of the book Without You. Suki lived undercover in North Korea in 2011 and worked as an English teacher. Suki taught in a school that was meant for the elite future leaders of the country. The school was more of a prison rather than a university campus. The country was shielded from the outside world so much that they didn't even know that the internet existed. Suki implemented small steps to open up the students' way of thinking. She started with a game Truth and Lie so that the students could realize the difference between the two. The whole North Korean culture was built around lies about the country's achievements. Then she started asking students to write essays that involved coming up with their own ideas and making an evidence-based argument to prove it. She wanted them to come out of the world where critical thinking was not allowed. The talk is more about what happens to the human mind and intellect when the country is run as a cult. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Bell Hooks. Critical thinking involves first discovering the who, what, when, and how of things.
Hello, I am Suman Sirur. Today I want to summarize two books on critical thinking skills. The first book, Weaponised Life, is by Daniel J. Levitin, Canadian cognitive psychologist. Daniel says we all consume news and media. How many of us take the time to verify the truth? Daniel says, don't take graphs and statistics at face value. Even visually simple graphics like pie charts can be manipulated. For example, in 2012, Fox News ran a pie chart showing the standing of the candidates. It took a second glance to notice the slices added up to more than 100%. Sometimes the details that media authors tend to omit are vitally important. For example, after the Paris terrorist attacks on 13 November 2015, some experts argued for stricter EU border controls for Arab people. The arguments ignored the big picture of saving thousands of refugees by Europe's asylum policy. We must be vigilant to spot counter knowledge, the false information that many people still perceive as true. The most common form of counter knowledge is the imaginative conspiracy theories. For example, Andrew Wakefield, a surgeon, published an article on a link between autism and vaccination. As a doctor, he had the appearance of an expert, but in fact, he was not familiar with autism. The fallout was huge. The author asks us to use the Bayesian method to become a critical consumer of news. The more ludicrous the claim, the more diligent you need to be. For example, in 2015, Donald Trump claimed he'd seen thousands and thousands of Muslims on TV cheering the collapse of the World Trade Center. Over to Shyam.
The second book I want to summarize is Asking the Right Questions, a guide to critical thinking. The author says that critical thinking is all about asking the right questions. What is amazing about the book is that each chapter of the book is dedicated to a question. Here is the list of these questions. What are the issues and the conclusions? Which words or phrases are ambiguous? What are the value conflicts and assumptions? Are there any fallacies in the reasoning? How good is the evidence? Are the statistics deceptive? What significant information is omitted? The author doesn't want you to be a roadblock to ideas but put forth by others, but to seek together. Hope this list becomes your companion in your success. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Amala Akinini. Critical thinking and curiosity are the key to creativity.
Hello, I'm Uttam Sirur. Today I want to summarize two movies on critical thinking skills. In the first movie, Girl Boxer, we meet Jessalyn Silva, a 10-year-old girl who loves to box. She dreams of someday winning an Olympic gold medal. The documentary helps us to learn how teachers use movies to develop critical thinking skills in children. These are the typical instructions to the students by the teacher before watching a film. Watch the short film carefully. Discuss what moments in this film stood out for you and why. Write a note on whether any surprises, anything that challenges what you know. Speak for 3 minutes about the messages, emotions, or ideas you took away from this film. Such workshops are of great help to children for developing critical thinking skills. Critical viewing, a foundation of film literacy, is a method of analyzing the components of the content. It is also about the choices made during its creation. The next movie I want to talk about is The Boy Who Cried Warming. This documentary exposes the fraudulent claims that governments propagate about global warming to make money from their citizens. It reinforces everything we know and then calls it all into question. It then makes several shocking claims. Surprisingly, these claims are validated by professionals on the subject. The documentary is a real eye-opener. The film evaluates many misconceptions associated with global warming and offers a scientific overview of carbon dioxide on our planet. It takes an in-depth look at various carbon trading regulations and the potential adverse effects on the world's economies. The film offers new data on the topic of climate change. Also unique to The Boy Who Cried Warming is that the film story runs parallel to the Aesop fable, The Boy Who Cried Wolf. The film challenges the carbon trading legislation enacted by the best brains in the world. What can we learn from this documentary? Do not hesitate to challenge even the biggest of the big. The shepherds of global warming were usually those who cried the loudest and made the boldest predictions. We end this chapter with a quote from Susan Cain. We put too much of a premium on presenting and not enough on substance and critical thinking.
Hello, I am Vrinda Mantri. Today, I will speak about two stories from mythology to learn critical thinking skills. Critical thinking is all about asking the right questions so that we can do an objective evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment. This story is about the book of questions called Prashnopanishad. Prashna, the Sanskrit word, means a question. Sage Pippalada is the author of Prashnopanishad. Pippalada was the son of sage Dadichi, who gave his life to save gods. Dadichi's wife wanted to follow her husband, so she left the newborn Pippalada under the care of a peepal tree. Hence his name Pippalada. When Pippalada grew up, he got insights from Lord Shiva about life and became a revered sage. 6 disciples approached Pippalada to get answers for questions about life. The answers to these questions is the Prashnopanishad. These are the 6 questions. How did life begin? What is a living being? Where does life originate from? What is God's role in humans' different states? Example, sleeping, waking, and dreaming, etc. What is meditation and why meditate? What is immortal in the human being? You can search more about these answers to the questions from the internet. Now I would like to speak about the unanswered questions from Buddhism. The unanswered questions are those that the Buddha refused to answer. Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, says, the Buddha always told his disciples not to waste their time and energy in metaphysical speculation. Whenever Buddha was asked a metaphysical question, he remained silent. Questioned one day about the problem of the infinity of the world, the Buddha said, whether the world is finite or infinite, limited or unlimited, the problem of your liberation remains the same. These are the questions that Buddha refused to answer. Is the world eternal? Is the world finite? Is the soul and the body the same? Does a realized person exist after death? What am I? Did I exist in the past? Shall I exist in the future? It's very interesting to see from these two stories that one sage makes it his life's purpose to write about life's most important questions, whereas the other sage asks us not to waste time in trying to find answers to these questions. Let me end my reading with this quote from Jane Smiley. Critical thinking is to a liberal education as faith is to religion.
We hope that our efforts helped you to understand the basics of critical thinking skill. A regular listening to this audio will be our reward. Thank you.